Well, for months since his falling out with Queensland's Liberal National Government, the flamboyant mining mogul Clive Palmer has been hinting at setting up his own party to take a serious tilt at politics. Well, tonight he's ready to spell out his plans and he joins us now in our Brisbane studio. Clive Palmer, thanks for being there.
Oh, it's good to be here, Tony.
Why did you choose Anzac Day to storm the ramparts of federal politics?
Well, I guess it's not really Anzac Day, but when we think of Anzac Day, we think of all the people that went overseas representing Australia. They didn't go as Liberals, they didn't go as Labor people, they went as Australians. And what we think we need now is a party to unite all Australians in our time of crisis, to work together. We shouldn't degrade people because of their political beliefs. It doesn't matter if they're Liberals or Labor. We shouldn't really say they're bad people. We should want to get the best for the community. I think we need to take away the game from professional politicians who say the same thing. It doesn't matter whether it's Tony Abbott or Julia Gillard. They've got the same lobbyists influence them, the same focus groups. We need to think about more what the people need. OK,
so tell us what you're going to call it. Let's hear you say it.
It's the United Australia Party, Tony. It's a reformation of the original party, of course, which has had 3 prime ministers in our history and is a shining example of where we should go.
What we know about the United Australia Party, at least the original one, it was formed, the first leader and the formation leader was Joe Lyons. He was an old Labor man and he brought Labor dissidents together with Conservatives to build a party that was outside of the other parties, I suppose. Is that what you're thinking of doing now? Do you have that in mind? Well,
I think we want to bring all Australians, and whether they're from the left or the right, to say that a lot of these issues are not political. They're really what's best for the community. You know, as I said, the role of lobbyists now. Lobbyists run the ALP, they run the Liberal Party, and the people of Australia don't get much say. I mean, you only have to look at the fact that we've got the highest rate of infant mortality in Aboriginal population. And no one cares about it, no one does anything about it. I mean, if your children were dying, you'd expect something to be done. We've got thousands of Australians, highest rate of infant mortality, and Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott haven't said a word about it.
Okay,
we need action.
All right, so I've got a couple of quick questions. First of all, have you registered the party yet?
Yeah, the party has been formed. It's applied for registration in Queensland. And it's got a constitution and it's open for membership, and unitedaustralia.org website will be up at 12 tomorrow, so all Australians can look up the website and join. I'm sure we'll get a lot of people. OK,
here's a very important question. What seat will you be running in? Because you've hinted in the past at running in the seat of high-profile Labor ministers.
Well, put it this way, I definitely will be running in a seat in Queensland, but it'd be presumptuous for me, like any political party, it's got to have its own pre-selections, and by the end of next week we'll be announcing some of our candidates for federal parliament. We plan to run in 127 seats in the House of Representatives and all Senate seats, so there'll be a good chance for the people of Australia to have a real alternative for a change.
So we're talking about a truly national party here. We're not talking about
well, it's not the national
Queensland.
Party.
No, a party that's going to run nationally, though.
Oh, that's
not
correct.
Just Queensland party.
That's right. It's running right across the nation, and it'll be in every seat in the next election.
How many candidates have you decided on so far?
Well, we haven't decided on any, Tony. We've just formed the party, but we've got interest. The reason we've had a delay from when we talked about this last year was that I was a reluctant warrior, but we've had overwhelming responses from people in so many states saying something has to be done to ensure that government is restored back to the electorate rather than be run by lobbyists.
Well, let me just ask this quick question. Are you going to have renegade or rebel LNP MPs who are already in state parliament jumping ships and joining your party?
Well, that's up to them. I'll have to ask them that question. But I think if you'll see, a lot of things will develop over the next week or two. I'm quite confident of that.
Are you confident that that might happen? Because, you know, you talked about 5 last year potentially. I think you then reduced the number, but a number of LNP MPs were interested in joining a party under you. Is that right?
Well, I think that's true, but this is not a state initiative. It's for the next federal election. Really, is our focus, and we've got a lot of very good people that want to stand for federal parliament, notable Australians that want to serve the community and make a difference. You know,
are we talking about high-profile people?
We are, yeah.
And you can't name any of them at the moment, apart from yourself?
Well, we don't want to give you all the headlines in one night, Tony. We want to come back a little bit, even though you're the best journalist in Australia. We want to come back
thank you very much for that. But let's actually ask a few questions. Should the member for Lilly, Wayne Swan, be looking over his shoulder at a possible Clive Palmer bid for his seat?
Well, Wayne Swan's a very nice guy. His problem is you can't count. He said we'd have a balanced budget, but it's going to be $60 billion over. So if you want a treasurer that makes a mistake of $60 billion,
now you're already talking like a politician. I'm asking whether you're going to run in his seat of Lily.
I'm sure there'll be a good candidate running there. It'll be up to the United Australia Party to decide who runs everywhere. Like, I'm just a party member, like everyone else, and I've got to go along with the rules. Otherwise, it would be wrong for me to presume I'd get endorsed anywhere.
Won't you be the chief funder of the party as well as a member?
We'll certainly support the party and make sure that the message can get out, just like we have the LNP and the Liberal Party in prior years.
You certainly will be standing there.
I definitely will be standing for federal parliament, sure.
And if you win the election, what happens next? Do you put all of your mining interests in a blind trust?
No, well, I don't even think about my interests, Tony. Life's a journey. You only move through life. Shouldn't be too attached to property. It's the experience that's just more important.
No, that's obviously that's true. But if you actually win a seat in Parliament, there'll be an expectation that you remove yourself from the running of your enterprises. And is that what you're intending to do? If you
I've removed myself today from the running of my enterprises, from a practical sense. But if any matter came up before any government thing that I was involved in, there'd be a conflict of interest. I'd leave the room and wouldn't vote on it. And that's what happens for corporate directors. Those sort of rules don't apply to lobbyists, and they should. Lobbying firms in Australia have a former member of the ALP and a former member of the Liberal Party, and it doesn't matter who's in government. You go and give them $1 million and they'll get you the right result.
No, but you know what people will be worried about? If you don't distance yourself from your huge mining interests, that they'll believe they've actually put a lobbyist into Parliament.
Well, put it this way, I won't be doing any business anymore while I'm in this position.
OK. People who know their political history will remember the Joe for Canberra push, which damaged John Howard's attempt to become Prime Minister in 1987. They're going to make the same comparisons with whether this is going to be Clive for Canberra push and whether this will damage Tony Abbott's chances in Queensland in particular. What do you say to that? Well,
firstly, Joe never stood for federal parliament, so it's a little bit of
I know, but he did all that damage without even forming a party and standing.
Well,
tremendous
you can call
damage
it damage, but I'm actually standing, and I have actually formed a party, and we've got policies. What this nation needs is ideas, and the debate about ideas doesn't damage anybody. We have a fully preferential system. If people want to vote for Tony Abbott, and our policies in the United Australia Party will nearly be identical to the Liberal Party with a few variations.
Well, see, that is the fundamental question, though. You mentioned we've got a preferential system, and of course Tony Abbott will want to know whether you're intending to automatically preference the Liberal National Party, his party, in Queensland.
Well, that'd be presumptuous for me before the party executives considered the matter to make any announcement. But all I would say is that we've got a difference. We've got similar policies, but there are 5 basic things that we differ from the Liberal Party. The first one is that we don't believe our party officials should be lobbyists. Tony Abbott does. So if you want Tony Abbott's policies and you want lobbyists, vote for Tony Abbott. But if you think that I do, we need to have better proprietary and not have lobbyists running the government. Give us your vote.
OK, that's one. What's the next one?
Second one is that we think we should abolish the carbon tax, but not abolish it when Tony Abbott or the next parliament's elected, but retrospectively. So we want people and unemployed people in the Latrobe Valley to get their jobs back. We want electricity prices to come down, and we want this nation to be more competitive.
OK, number 3?
Number 3, I guess, is about refugees. We think it's crazy to waste $5 billion a year sending the fleet up to block refugees. And we think it's crazy that people that haven't got a visa can't board a plane for $800, come to our airports in Melbourne, and if they're not legitimate immigrants, be sent straight back on the next plane.
OK, that's a pretty fundamental difference. Number 4?
Number 4 is that we think we should take the mineral resources that we've got in Queensland and in Western Australia and having Commonwealth incentives where we set up downstream processing in New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia, and rather than export our minerals at $100 a tonne, we get $1,500 a tonne, create more revenue, more jobs, more tax and more facilities.
Very briefly, number 5?
The 5th one, of course, is we do think that Australia needs to have a system where people who create wealth in various parts of the country, that some of it goes back to that part of the country. Sort of that if a region's creating a certain amount of wealth, they can be sure that that will flow back into their community. So we really develop the whole country, not just Sydney and Melbourne, but right across Australia, because that's where the wealth is. All
right. How big a competition is it going to be for these floating group of voters, Conservative mostly, with you and Bob Katter?
Well, I don't know if I would see myself in arguing with Bob Catt on anything, really. Bob's got his own views, which are totally different to mine.
Yeah, but that will be a fundamental competition. Or do you think you'll be taking votes away from the Liberal and the Labor parties?
Well, we don't look at it that way, Tony. We think that we've got some great ideas. We think we can contribute to the debate, and hopefully that we can get the support of Australians. It's not reasonable to say that Australians will vote for a party and their votes locked in forever before the contest. Let's have the contest. Let's get the best ideas out there. Let's let the people decide.
OK, last year you said that you were too fat to be Premier. And now, does that mean you rule out taking a pitch for Prime Minister?
Well, I've lost a bit of weight since last year, Tony.
Yes, I thought you were looking very slim.
Maybe you haven't realised that, but I think I'm in fighting fit at the moment. So,
well, you're not exactly on the poly pedal, but are you considering seriously that you might be able to make a tilt for Prime Minister at some point? Well,
it's up to the people to decide. As you know, the people of Australia elected me as a living national treasure, and that was their choice, not mine. And I accepted that award out of my respect for their judgment, not really for myself. So whatever it goes, I think I'm prepared to do. I'm not frightened to put ideas up there which I think can make this country better. After all, it's really crazy to think a person that's never run anything more than a tuck shop can run a $1 trillion economy. We're at a time in our history where we need to make critical decisions to create jobs in this country.
Okay.
We need to have proper industrial policy.
I'm sorry, we're nearly out of time, but
sure.
I've got a couple of other quick questions, and they do relate to funding. We mentioned you're a very wealthy man. Have you set any limits on how much you personally could put behind this party? Because there are actually no limits on how much an individual can back himself or his party, campaign funding limits. So, I mean, could you just withdraw millions of dollars and put it behind this party around the country?
Well, I don't intend withdrawing anything, Tony. I think what the need is to get the message out. I'm happy to contribute, and I hope other Australians will too. As I said,
my point is
it's not the Clive Palmer party like the Catter party. It's the United Australian Party. So yeah. I'm not the only person in it.
But seriously, you could potentially fund it for millions of dollars, as you funded the Liberal National Party in the past.
Well, that's certainly true.
And do you intend to do that?
Well, I haven't made up my mind, Tony. We've just formed the party, and I'd be presumptuous of me to try to push my weight around and say what I should do. It's a battle of ideas, not a battle of money.
Clive Palmer, a pleasure to talk to you. An interesting day for everybody. You may have changed the nature of politics in Queensland for sure, perhaps around the country. Thank you very much.
Let's hope so. All the best.